Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard, learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome. Today, we are going to be talking to Jasman. He is a Christian creative coach with a heart to see others excel in their areas of giftedness. He's a graduate of Taylor University in Upland, Indiana, with a degree in music marketing. Jasman is an international award-winning producer and songwriter and has worked in a number of capacities within the music industry. He's the founder of Purposed 365 and Higher Level Agency, and currently serves as the Director of Communications for 117 Entertainment. He also serves as part of the artist management team at Noble Management. Jasman and his beautiful wife, Nicoya, have been married for 18 years, and they have two beautiful daughters. Welcome, Jasman. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Amanda. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. So thank you. And I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, I am wonderful. I've been looking forward to this so much.
Yeah, likewise. It's an
Okay.
honor.
Well, it is, for those people who are listeners, let me just tell you, some of my guests that I've had on, I never would have met if it were not for the heart of Jasman to connect people and to come alongside and encourage people in what they're doing and the purpose for their life. And so he has been a wonderful addition to my life. And I am just so excited to interview him because I believe that because of him, that's why half of the most recent interviews have even occurred. So, Jasman, I would like to start at the beginning. I love to ask
Sure.
this question. I think people's lives are so interesting. Would you tell us just a bit about your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from the islands of the Bahamas, beautiful islands of the Bahamas.
Uh-huh.
That's where I grew up. My parents are both from a little island just 50 miles off of Florida called Bimini. So in my formative years, probably from age 0 to 7, I lived on the island of Bimini. And then when I was about 7 years old, we moved to Nassau, the capital.
Mhm.
So grew up as an island boy.
That must have been nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how would you describe your family life?
So family life for me, I grew up in a Christian home.
Mhm.
So you grew up in the church, grew up serving in ministry. I saw my grandparents and my parents, very active in ministry. So I guess I was one what they call a drug baby. I was drugged to church. So, I was in church most of my life.
I've never heard that one. I've heard so many. I heard Pew Baby and other things. I never heard that one. That's great. I think it's so wonderful, even if we don't exactly understand what's going on, that we're put into the position of being around the community of other believers when we're young. I think we learn a lot more than we know.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
after speaking with you in our pre-recording call, I would say that you have a heart to serve. And you said to me that serving is where we are given purpose. Would you share more about that with us?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, honestly, I think my heart to serve really was formed as a result of growing up in church, like like we just talked about.
Yeah.
Um, I think when your family is in ministry, you're always called to do something, right?
Hmm.
So I was always involved pretty actively with helping with ministry.
Hmm.
And I think growing up, I also, witnessed my grandparents and my parents just always helping others, taking people in. Sometimes that was missionaries or, members of family that came to live with us for a time period. So I think a lot of the ministry work I saw them doing, I guess kind of naturally rubbed off on me. So,
Yeah.
I think my heart to serve kind of stemmed from that.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like it was in your everyday moments. It wasn't just at church, it was having people in your home. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. Now, when you were young, you had said that you always wanted to be a pilot. Why was that? And when did that change?
Um, I am not 100% sure how that originated. I would probably say so. Bimini was a small island, right?
Uh-huh.
So 7 miles long, I think by half mile wide. Like you
Wow.
could literally, the island slopes a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So you could literally stand, there are two main streets. I think it's Kings Highway and Queens Highway. So say if you're standing on the top street, Kings Highway, you turn around and you could see the water, right? You could see the beach. You
Right.
you look in the other direction down the slope, you could see the other end of the island. So it was a very small island. So it was very kind of family oriented, not a lot of activities going on. So growing up, I was very big into sports. I'm not
Mhm.
really now, but as a little boy, I was really into the track and field and football. And
Mhm.
I think kind of the next thing that was just a thing that boys were interested in of the island were planes because we had this airline, Chalk's Airline,
Uh-huh.
back in the day, that operated a seaplane that came to our island, and that was kind of one of the main forms of transportation from, off the island to the U.S. or to Nassau. So I
Right.
think it was just always this fascinating thing to see the seaplanes come in and land and then come up on the ramp. So probably that's where that stemmed. I think a lot of the other friends that I had at that age, especially my best friend, he also wanted to be a pilot. So we just kind of did a lot of things surrounding planes, with Legos and all of that good stuff. So I think that's kind of where the whole pilot thing
Yeah.
is from.
That's really cool. I mean, it must have been so exciting when there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can
When
see
it
that.
was.
Now, there was a big plane crash. Does that change what you felt about being a
Yeah.
pilot?
So, um, backtracking a little bit to your question, so I wanted to, so the pilot thing was there with me, I think my most of my life, right?
Right.
So from a little boy, I think even on my little kindergarten medal, it says that I wanted to be a pilot. So I
Oh.
wanted to be a pilot from early age, probably up until about age 16 or 17.
Mhm.
So as you mentioned, there was a tragic plane crash um, in the island of Bimini, or people from Bimini were on this plane. It probably was about 5 or 6 people that I knew, and I mean, it was such a tragedy. Everyone
Wow.
on the plane was burnt beyond recognition and could only be identified by the dental records, I think.
Oh,
So that was just kind of a shifting point in my life. It was almost like a faucet turned off. Like from that point on, I just no longer had a desire to be a pilot. That tragedy just had that big of an effect on me. So it was
wow.
probably when I was about 16 or 17
Yeah.
that dream just kind of changed.
Yeah. And I'm sorry for your loss. That sounds like it was really traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, that had been your main focus. What became your focus? What did you want to be?
So for me, music was always a big part of my life. I had family I was surrounded by music, and of course, being a part of ministry, you're always surrounded by music. So music was kind of like, I guess, the secondary thing in my life.
Hmm.
Um, Growing up, I'd always enjoyed playing drums and that sort of thing. So I think it was just kind of an automatic shift from, oh, I wanted to be a pilot. Now I wanted to do something in music. So music then became the thing that I focused on. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
And that was really just entrenched in your family history. It was just woven into everyone, was
Hmm.
somehow musical or singing, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
I had lots of uncles that played drums and saxophone and trumpet, and even early on, I remember my grandfather would teach music lessons on his front porch to some of the kids from the church and my cousins on Sunday afternoon. So yeah, music was always a big thing. That was my maternal grandfather, and on my dad's side. My grandfather was always big into the cultural music of the Bahamas,
Uh-huh.
canoe. So music was really a big part of my upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like that's what your focus would have been. I guess the planes were just really exciting and you were young. And so it occurs to me, though, when you talked about always wanting to be a pilot and knowing you the way that I do and in your heart for helping others, it occurs to me that a pilot rises up above the world. And
Mm.
I think you're a pilot in a different way. I think you take people to a higher place, a place of godly purpose above all the worldly life. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, that is a big thought, Amanda. And
Well,
honestly, I had never really um, thought of that analogy or saw that, right? So I think, excuse me, I really thought about that initially when I do a podcast as well, and I received a comment, kind of that effect that said that I was a pilot from one of my listeners, um, and then excuse me, during our initial call, you mentioned it as well, so
yeah,
I guess I kind of saw that theme. But honestly, I just love to see other people excel in their areas of giftedness.
yeah,
And I guess it's just my nature when I learn of someone's gifting or their passion or their desire, basically to use whatever resource I have, whether it's something big or something little, just
yeah.
to really help encourage them to develop those giftings or to pursue a vision or a dream. So yeah, I think it's just kind of a natural part of me.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool to find out that somebody else had told you that. It's really an affirmation. And I think a lot of times we don't see from kind of that bird's eye view the picture of the story of our life the way that other people do. And that's why it's so important to share your story because it connects to people in different ways. And sometimes we even benefit sharing because we find out something that's just a little treasure that we hadn't really ever thought of.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very.
And I believe God, you know, evidently placed this on you on purpose. And so that's the other reason why I see you as a pilot. I believe like he gave you this role and you're just naturally carrying it out. It just feels like it's an extension of who you are, and it is. But he gave you this role to kind of take people higher.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing to be given by God to do.
Yeah, it is an honor to serve. It
Yeah.
really is.
So, would you say that you're just naturally an encourager then?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really my heart. Um, I honestly, I think Amanda really know firsthand that there's really just so much power in an encouraging word, right?
Yeah.
Just one simple act that's aimed at encouraging someone could really breathe new life into them, and you never really know what that can do, what sort of lasting effect that could have, right?
Right.
So I guess if I think of Hebrews 10, I think it's verse 24, it is
Mhm.
a great reminder of this, and it says this, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards
Mm.
love and good deeds. And I think that really is my heart daily to really just push other people to really do good and really to pursue purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's where I believe we find joy in doing, the things that God has called us to do, the passions that God has placed deep within us. So,
Absolutely. And you're just a kindred spirit. I love to do that as well. There's just it I can't describe what it's like to pour into someone or to just give a positive word, let someone know how grateful you are for who they are and that they've
yeah,
made a difference, that they
yep.
they have to be here.
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep. And just to kind of piggyback on that, like you said, such kindred spirits, like it feels like we've known each other for a short time, but it feels like we've known to me each other forever. And I
Yeah,
just love what you're doing. And that's why, like I say, it's just my nature when I learn of what you're doing to connect you with people because I believe, like you believe, everyone's story matters, right?
yeah.
And the fact that you are shining light even on people that may not necessarily have a title or a big position, you're allowing them to share their story. That in itself is just such an encouraging thing. And I mean, you have no idea. Even allow me to come on here and share my story today, how much of an encouragement it is to me. So I want to encourage you, excuse me, to continue to do what you're doing because you're changing lives.
Thank you. And this was not my idea. This was God's idea. And he just was showing me the value. It
Mm,
was like gems and treasures, all these different people, all these unique experiences, and how beautiful they were. And when they include him, how beautiful it was to him. It was a blessing
yeah,
to him when we share what he means to us and how he's been there for us. And it's just, yeah, I enjoy sharing people's stories who don't even have any social media.
mm,
They have no way to have a platform, and I believe that if I'm sharing somebody else's story, I'm also sharing God's story. So for me, it's the biggest encouragement. I'm like the one who's winning here. I get to talk
yes.
to you guys and I get encouraged every single pre-recording call, every recording of what God's doing. He's
Yeah,
awesome.
that is awesome.
So when I met you, you were doing a ministry you have that's purposed 365, and it encourages people to follow their purpose. Why did you start this? How did that come to be?
Uh, wow. I would say I think Amanda, one of the things that the pandemic did, one positive thing I think is it really stirred some gifts in people, right?
Yeah.
It was an awakening. It was a time for people to kind of reflect and think a lot about what they're doing with their lives, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think for me, w- one of the things was maybe a little bit of a creative boredom, right? But like I've always felt called to be an encourager, like you said,
Yeah.
and deep down inside, I think I always had a desire to start a podcast. Well, not always, but maybe for a few years because I was a big listener to podcasts at one point in my life, like daily. So I always kind of had this desire, but I think I was afraid to step out
Hmm.
and do it. And I think just kind of being creatively bored within the space of 2020,
Yeah.
this vision came to me um, just to continue what I was doing through Instagram because on my Instagram account at one point I was posting just a lot of encouraging quotes, go for your dreams, follow your dreams, today is the day to do it, that sort of
Hmm.
thing. So I wanted to start this podcast where I would kind of create this community just to encourage people to do that, to pursue their dreams. And I did want to share stories, encouraging stories, testimonies of people that have, overcame challenges to
Hmm.
walk into purpose. So that's kind of where like the initial thought, it came for this whole purposed 365. Just wanting to encourage people to pursue purpose and live with intentionality 365 days a year. So that's the premise or how that was birthed and where it stems from.
Well, that's powerful. And what better thing to do when you're bored than actually do something that's going to help other people and help them get focused and maybe take them out of their boredom,
Mm, yeah,
and very cool. Now, you ended up going to Taylor University,
I
and I
did.
think it was kind of an interesting story because you were in the Bahamas. Can
Mhm.
you tell the listeners kind of about how that happened?
Yeah, so it was. just kind of a God thing. The more I share about my life, um, the more I kind of realized how intentional God is.
Hmm.
How every single season in life, God kind of orchestrates, right?
Yeah.
For us to walk into purpose. So the whole, I'll try to give the short version.
Okay.
It seems like every question is a long story in itself. But the whole Taylor University thing stemmed from this. When I got married, I stepped into teaching music in the Bahamas because it was the most stable career for a musician, right?
Right.
Someone wanting to start a family. So I did that for 3 years. Um, I worked for the Catholic Board of Education in the Bahamas, teaching music to a few schools there. But I honestly didn't feel very fulfilled teaching. I didn't feel like that was where I was called to. So I wanted to further my education. And it just happened so that one of my uncles was getting married this summer. I think it was the summer of 2005.
Hmm.
So I went to my uncle's wedding, and it just happened so that I was just kind of, praying about my next, right? I knew
Right.
I wanted to go back to school to, further my education with music, and didn't know how that was going to happen. So when I went to my uncle's wedding, I played trumpet. So I played as part of the band for the wedding, and then there was a little jazz combo put together for the reception.
Hmm.
So as part of that, my uncle actually went to Taylor University, and he wasn't a music major, but he was very musical. So he was involved in band and all of that good stuff. So he invited the head of the music department to his wedding. So we got to play side by side. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I was able to kind of share with him my desire to go back to school. So that's really what started the journey to Taylor University. Uh, Rewind a little bit. So when I was a student at the College of the Bahamas several years prior, Taylor University always had a big relationship with the Bahamas. So they brought their jazz band and their chorale down, and we had a little exchange with our jazz combo and their jazz combo. So I had initially met Dr. Harrison, who was then the head of the music department at Taylor University. I'd initially met him then. So this meeting at my uncle's wedding was like the second time, we had met. So
Cool. That's pretty
I,
cool.
yeah, it's just crazy how God works in the details of our life.
Yeah.
Um, so, fast forward, that was I think in June of 2005. So when I went back, I started to get things together, put in, my application. I was able to receive several scholarships, and in January of 2006, I was on my way to Upland, Indiana to attend Taylor University. So that's, I mean, in that time span, God had just done a lot of things just to make things happen and make it possible. But that is how I ended up at Taylor University.
I love how personal that story is.
Yep.
And how you really can't give it to anyone but God. It's not a coincidence. I love when people use quote unquote, it was a coincidence.
Mm,
No, it was not a coincidence.
no,
God is always for you, even when you don't know him. He is for you.
exactly.
You
Yep.
know. Now
So
you were very close to finishing your degree when your first daughter was on the way. And you said that you had felt you needed to put school aside to provide for the family. What did you do next?
so that was I was teaching at music at that point.
Mhm.
And even prior to this, and the story may be a little mixed up, but it's so funny. This just reminded me of this. So when I was in the college at the College of the Bahamas, this was right before we got married. Uh,
Mhm.
my best friend and we wanted to go to Berkeley, Berkeley College of Music, and we were both accepted to go to Berkeley. And so we that obviously did not happen.
Mhm.
So it was funny when Taylor University visited during that time that I just spoke about. Our head of music department there at the College of the Bahamas was pushing my best friend and I, say, you should go and talk to Dr. Harrison, talk to Dr. Harrison, get into Taylor University. And
Hmm.
we just kind of laughed and we were like, we don't want to go to Taylor University. We're going to Berkeley, right? So it's just funny how that all unfolded. But fast forward, I didn't finish my music degree, and then right in the midst of that, I was one class away from it, got married, needed something stable, um, and then I applied again for Berkeley after, like right before our eldest daughter got married, was born, and got accepted again, and because she was coming. I kind of put it off again.
Yeah,
So I guess that was God's way of saying like Taylor University was it. It wasn't Berkeley.
that's right.
I,
And what did you do? So you had to stop just one class shy of getting your degree. What did you end up doing as a job at that time?
so that was when I started to teach.
Okay.
Yeah. So right before we got married was when I started to teach. So when she was born, I was teaching at that point.
Okay. I was under the impression that that was the time. Maybe I took my notes wrong. Around that time was when you had taken a job, which you didn't really understand why that was the job until later, as a custodian.
Oh, so that happened after I completed Taylor University. So
Oh, see, I got it wrong, folks. Okay. Got to be very close and listen. Okay. So tell us about that period of time.
Yeah. So during my time at Taylor, when I was a student, I worked as part of the floor crew. So we waxed and finished floors and cleaned carpets during the summertime. So
Mhm.
I kind of developed a relationship with the custodial staff there, and developed that skill. So after I graduated with my degree, I was looking for jobs in Nashville and elsewhere in the music industry, and it just didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Just didn't happen. So there was a couple openings that, happened in the housekeeping department there at Taylor University. So I reluctantly applied and was offered the full-time position. So I took it on and I worked there as a custodian or housekeeper at Taylor University for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Now, I know it wasn't what you were looking to do, but God always uses everything and he has a purpose sometimes that we don't understand.
absolutely.
What did he do during that time? Because had you just gone right into what you were looking to do, you wouldn't have had the opportunity and the time to grow some things he was growing in you. What was he growing in you?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'll say when I first started that job, I remember just really having, oh man, this battle with contentment, right?
Yeah.
Just having the mindset like, God, this isn't what I came to school to do. Um, why am I having to do this?
Yeah.
But through that whole process, I think God really taught me a lot of things. But probably a few of the most important lessons that I've learned through that process or that period was humility and patience. I think I learned that God's timing
Mhm.
on things isn't always our timing, right? Like sometimes it
It
it will
doesn't seem
take
like it ever is our timing, but yes.
So I learned that
Yeah.
God's timing isn't ours, and that waiting is really isn't wasted time. Um,
No.
well, the truth is actually it could be if we don't humble ourselves
Yeah.
to see the lessons that God's trying to teach us during that period. It could be wasted time, but it's
That's
one of
powerful. That's powerful that you
yeah,
put a pin there. That's true. We could
yep,
waste the waiting.
yep, we could. It
Yeah.
all depends on our attitude.
Yeah.
Um, and initially, my attitude it really stank. Um, But God worked on me, and I think through that waiting, I learned a lot. So humility and patience, I think, were the big lessons that I learned.
Yeah. It's funny you said that your attitude like kind of stunk in the beginning because I was kind of having a talk with God the other day about obedience. And I said, if I complain, but I do something you asked me to do, is it still obedience? Because I realized I was kind of complaining in my head about something, but I did it.
Uh-huh.
And I was trying to be real with God and like, okay, was that really obedience? And he led me to the parable of the two sons.
Mm.
And in the parable of the two sons, the first son, the father asked them to do something. The first son says, no, I'm not going to do it. And then he goes and he changes his mind and he does it anyway. And the second son says, I'll go do it right away. And he never did it. And
Mm.
it was the first son who said no, but then eventually went and did what the father asked, who actually did the father's will. So it made me feel a little bit better. I'm aspiring to not complain or grumble next time.
Mhm.
But there are times and certain things God asks us to do that they just don't make sense to us at the time.
Yep.
And it's hard not to begrudgingly move forward.
Yep.
So isn't he so great that he gives us grace?
Yep. Amidst our grown-up tantrums, right?
Yes. And this was only a week ago. So at least for you, it was a while back.
Well, I still have many of those moments, Amanda.
Yeah. But it really did do my heart well, kind of to think about the fact that, yes, okay, maybe I started out begrudgingly, but I did do it and I recognized was what he wanted. And
Hmm.
in the end, I see the value in why. So
Yeah,
um, now, eventually, you moved from Indiana to Nashville. That's a
I did.
really, really big move.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially music industry. That sounds exciting. It's a good place to go. What happened when you moved there?
Um, so I'll tell you a little bit what, that led up to it. As I was still working at Taylor University, just felt like there was a shift, right? I sensed that there was a shift, that God was leading me to the next thing.
Hmm.
I kind of talked to my wife and told her, I said, I feel like God's leading. It's time for us to move.
Yeah.
Um, so we prayed about it and felt release to move. So we listed our house, had an we accepted an offer within a week.
Wow.
And within our contract, we said that we would be out. And I look back and realize it was pretty ballsy, uh, that we would be out of the house 7 days after closing.
7 days?
7 days.
I
So,
mean, did you have a gigantic crew of people helping you? That's
oh,
ridiculous.
the truth is, now that I think back, Amanda, my wife and I, our daughters were a little bit younger then.
Yeah.
So my wife and I did most of the packing. And we had like a 26-foot truck. I packed the majority of the truck myself with some help
Wow.
from my wife. And then I had a friend at the end that came and helped me with the washer and the dryer and the couches.
Wow.
But man, that was kind of a crazy move. Um,
Yes, that's amazing. My goodness
So
gracious.
we did that. It was such a faith move. We didn't have any jobs lined up, and it probably was one of the most stressful times in my life because I think it was probably not until a couple days before we moved that we found housing because everyone here was just like, oh, well, do you have income? Like,
Yeah.
we're not going to give you a place to live if you can't pay the rent.
Yeah.
So it was super stressful, but as usual, God came through. God came through.
Thank
Uh,
goodness. Thank goodness he goes before us and makes a way.
hmm So we made that move back in 2017. So we've been here about 4.5 years now. But man, the work that God has done in our family's life, it blows my mind every time I think about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I I just love to hear all of the little details he pays attention to. And then I love when he puts you in a situation where the only way to get to the next step is a miracle because then you can't take credit for it.
Exactly.
And then he gets the
Exactly.
glory. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, you had what you described as kind of a miraculous conversation at one point with a musical artist. You want to tell me a little bit about that? They introduced you to someone, and next thing you know, boom, 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 you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give a little pre-story to that too. So after we moved here, um, funny thing, uh, guess what my first job was here in Nashville?
Well, it's not fair because I know, but What was your first job?
I was a custodian.
Oh my gosh.
So I gave myself about a month to find a music industry job, did
Mhm.
not, and ended up doing the exact same thing that I just done for 7 years. I kind of feel like felt it kind of felt like the story in the Bible where I think it was Jacob working for Rebecca, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Worked 7 years and
Like,
like I
um,
didn't get my promise.
yes.
So first time thinking of that analogy, but stepped into the same thing again. And man, it was like deja vu. Like we're
Yeah,
here again. Like wow, I didn't necessarily move to Nashville to do this, but again, it was just a season that God was teaching me so many things, right?
yeah.
So many things. And back to your question. So during my work there, this was in a March, I think March of 2018.
Mhm.
My wife was attending a women's conference, so I stayed home. I took time off from work to, pick up the girls from school. So I was just on the phone with an artist that I worked with, and we were just talking about vision. Just like to catch up with my
Mhm.
friends, share vision, and encourage. So we're kind of doing that with each other, and I was just sharing vision and said that, like I had during my time at Taylor. I had started a booking agency
Mhm.
called Higher Level Agency. It was Higher Level Management at the time, which was really aimed at helping artists and speakers grow their thing.
Hold on a second. Higher level. I hear a pilot theme. I didn't even think of that the first time. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we were I was talking with her about that and how I felt like I had reached my ceiling, right?
Yeah.
I needed a strategic partner to help me to take things to the next level.
Yeah.
Um, So, the conversation quickly shifted, and she was like, "Wait, I have to introduce you to this person." And it was someone that was in her life that she had known for years, and I had known her for years. We had worked together, done so many events, and just different ministry things. And
Mhm.
but this was now God's timing.
Yes.
After I had been working again, at this other university here, and learning so many it's just so much more things God was teaching me. So I
Mhm.
guess God felt the timing was right. I connected with this person. This was a Friday. We spoke about meeting Monday. We all met on Monday, and it was like crazy how God had spoken things to him like 3 months prior, and he was in
Wow.
preparation for basically a partnership and a collaboration with me.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
awesome.
crazy how God had literally spoke this thing to him that he had never done before, right? And
Right.
it was not a thing of God, is this you? It was more of a thing like, how do we move forward?
Yeah, yeah.
God really miraculously worked um, just to help position me
Yeah.
to where I am today. And what do I get to do on a daily basis? Speak into the lives of creatives. Um,
That's
just
so
help to
amazing.
encourage them to pursue purpose. So, and it's honestly a dream come true, right? I get to
Yeah.
be encourager for a living.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm fully walking in purpose and in my calling. So like I said, the last 4.5 years has been, God has blown my mind, the opportunity that He's given me. Um, it just blows my mind, all because of a simple act or a few simple acts of obedience.
Obedience, there's the key word. There is the key word. And while you were talking, I was thinking about Joseph. So God gave Joseph a dream really early on.
Mm,
Unfortunately, he shared it with people and they weren't so happy about it. But that dream didn't come to fruition until he spent some time in jail. Then he spent longer time in jail because people didn't tell anyone to remember him like they said they would. Then
mhm.
Potiphar's wife tried to, get him off track. And over again, the thing he chose was obedience and integrity. And they're the two things I see you choosing throughout your story. And eventually, God raised him up to a position that the dream was fulfilled.
Mm. Yeah, wow, it's powerful to parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
it,
that's
it
very cool.
it's amazing sometimes when we feel like we're not doing what we're called to do, it does sometimes feel like a prison sentence.
Yeah,
You know? But through that time in Joseph's story and in ours, we see that God's working in the details to really help to mature and grow the gifts and the skills in us to really, do what he's called us to do.
exactly. And that's what you said. You grew a lot of skills during your time when you were working, not in the field that you desired, but God was growing those things to use you for the time that your dream would be fulfilled. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it was very cool. Very cool.
Yep. Those early morning times, Amanda, really, provided me with lots of learning opportunity, where it's just me and God for
Yeah.
4 hours before there was anybody there on both jobs. So I had lots of time to just, like learn a lot about God, about myself,
Mhm.
listen to lots of faith building messages, learn about a lot more about business and how to operate it, learn lots more about the music industry. So that time was really a blessing.
Yeah. And again, it reminds me, it's parallel to the story in that in God's timing, that is when he came out, that is when he was raised up, and that is when he was a blessing to his own family and hundreds of thousands of people who would have starved if God hadn't raised him up at that time.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
very cool. And you feed people, so it's just different way. So I always like to see how God puts couples together, and I've heard a lot about your wife. How did you meet her? What is your relationship like? How is she a good partner for you?
So my wife has been such an amazing partner, a godsend. One of the things that I so love about her is, well, one, she's kind and caring.
Yeah.
Um, and I also love that she has never said, like, that's crazy to any of my crazy dreams. Like, oh, I want to start a booking agency. Oh, I want to start this thing called Purpose 365 and make these sorts of investments. Or,
Mhm.
like, let's just pick up our life here. We've lived here for 11 years and we have this stable community and we're involved actively in ministry at church to go and move to Nashville, Tennessee, where we know nobody, don't have
Hmm.
a job, and like, so she's always said, if God's leading you to do it, I am
Yeah,
behind you 100%. So I've always really valued that about my wife.
that's
Um,
amazing.
yep. So we initially met through church. Um, my dad. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm a PK.
Uh-huh.
So I would always invite people to church. And while I was at the College of the Bahamas, and this is just another just story of God's intentionality, right?
Right.
Uh, while I was at the College of the Bahamas, I was in this English class with this lady named Melanie, and I was kind of a people's person to some degree. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I would always invite the people that I was closest to church. So I invited Melanie to church. And she was my wife's sister-in-law. So that's how my wife initially started attending the church. Initially, there was no interest there on my part, but my wife sings, and
Hmm.
I formed a group with Melanie, my sister, and my wife. Um, and we would write original songs and we would, rehearse and practice them. So that's how we initially met. And I just kind of fell in love with her. Um, and she was just always this kind, um, affectionate person. I kind of fell in love with that. And that's how we met. And I guess the rest is history.
That's awesome. I mean, you were basically part of a team from the beginning, singing together and performing together. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Hmm.
I love that what you fell in love with was her heart first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's lasting. That's good stuff. She's also very beautiful, and so are your daughters.
Yes, I must say I'm blessed.
You are. So you told me as a child, you always played it safe and colored in the line, so to speak. You always followed the rules. How does that play out in your life right now?
You know what? I as a child, obviously I wasn't perfect, but I always strive to do the right thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think my upbringing really was what kind of trained me to always operate in integrity. So I think that has really helped me just in my life right now to operate in integrity. I
Hmm.
think that was the biggest, I guess, gift from
Yeah,
playing safe or staying within the lines, was just wanting to do the right thing.
that's awesome. When I think of staying within the lines, I think of being a little bit restricted though. And I was wondering, like, you love music so much. And for me, music transcends lines.
Hmm.
It takes us to places that are beyond the here and now, and it, whether it's worship music, whether it's secular music, it touches our emotions and our hearts. Why do you think it was like a balance? Part of you was one way, part was the other, and you use both. Like, why were you so drawn to music, which is more a little freer from being in the lines?
Um, I think really it was because there was just so much music always around me, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, Growing up, like I said, a lot of my uncles were into music, and my dad also was into music, and these people were my heroes. I really looked up to them, so
Yeah.
I wanted to be like them. So I think I kind of followed that fashion. Um, and I do think, the music there was kind of that balance because one of the things I eventually really got into a lot um, was jazz. So during my years at Taylor University, I played there as part of the jazz band and did a lot of improvisation. So I
I was
guess,
to say jazz is very much outside of the lines. I mean,
yeah,
just by definition. So that probably felt good though to have the balance in your life where you could be a
yeah,
little bit. Yeah, that's very
yeah.
cool.
Hmm.
So Proverbs 3, 5, 6 is a scripture that means a lot to you, and it means a lot to me too. In my old house before I moved, I actually painted Proverbs 3, 5 on the risers of my steps
Mm.
so I would see it when I came in. Why does this scripture mean so much to you?
Well, I honestly think I mean, it's short, two verses, right? But very, very power packed,
Yeah,
right? We're frail as human beings. And I realize that, honestly, Amanda, there is absolutely nothing, that I could do without God. Without Him, I would fail. So these verses really just kind of act as a reminder that I need God in the details of my life. It doesn't matter if it's a big thing or a little thing. For me, daily, just, thinking through this verse and praying like, God, I need you today. Like there's
yeah.
no success without you. So yeah, I think that's why it's big to me because it's very practical, and I realize just the need for God in all of every detail of my life, not just the big things, but also the little things.
Amen. The little things are super important.
Yep,
The little things can trip you up.
for sure.
They can. I mean, the scripture, beware the little foxes that ruin our vineyards that are in
Mhm.
bloom. I looked up what foxes and I thought, well, that's weird. They just eat some of the grapes. How can they ruin it? But I looked up what foxes do, and they dig at the roots and they chew and they
Mhm.
actually destroy the plant.
Wow.
So little things are super important. And
Yep.
I think sometimes we're like, it's just little. They add up.
Yep. It rocks the foundation.
Yeah. So with Purpose 365, I don't know exactly how you started, but I know right now you have the podcast, you have an Instagram platform that's very encouraging to people, and you also have an extension where you have t-shirts and other things for sale. I think hats. What was there anything else?
Yeah. So t-shirts, sweats, hoodies,
Uh-huh.
hats.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And I have one myself, and I actually there's
yeah.
another one I really want because she's got a new thing out that's just up my alley. And
It with
um,
me.
those are great because not only can people support you, but when they wear them out, people ask about it, and we can talk about purpose, and we can talk about hope, and we can,
Hmm.
have these conversations.
Yep.
and they're also very good looking. Can you share with us about that a little bit? And everyone, I will put links in the show notes so that you can check it out, and you can go take a look at all the things that Jazz is doing. But how did all of that, how did you end up getting so many different pieces? Was it one at a time? Did you have the vision all together?
So, well, first of all, thank you for the plug and thank you for the support, man. You are just such an awesome encourager in so many different ways. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
But with this, a part of me, I've always, I think, enjoyed wearing and supporting clothing with a message, right? Apparel with a message.
Hmm.
So when I thought about starting the whole Purpose 365 thing, and it's funny how I wrote this vision down from I was living in Indiana. And I think I don't remember exactly, but I think even the name, not necessarily Purpose 365, but Purposed,
Hmm.
because it stemmed back from a song that I co-wrote back in my college days. So that theme of purposed and purpose was always there.
Yeah.
Um, so, started, like you said, with the Instagram initially, and then it was always just a vision to create this lifestyle apparel that you could promote, promote purpose, promote your faith. So, like you said, it could be conversation starters to really talk to people about purpose, talk to people about hope, talk to people about Jesus, who is hope. Um, so that's kind of how things started with that, and then with the podcast.
Hmm.
Just kind of started with one T-shirt at a time. First, initially the purpose one, and just as I always had this thought about, all day, every day, living for His glory. That's
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
And then, even as we've had conversations, just thinking more about how our stories matter, right?
Yes.
So the most recent one is your story has purpose, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how things got started there and where we're at with the apparel. I just feel like, we should live out our faith in very practical ways every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I had no intentions of ever starting a podcast. The way that God brought it about was a blessing and just so full of grace and love for my situation of being obedient, taking care of my parents, but feeling very shut in. I'm a gregarious person. I'm always sharing the gospel. I'm always encouraging or talking to people. And I was trying to keep them safe. And I was so
Mm.
shut off during the pandemic. So doing this has been so wonderful. But now he's beginning, now that I've been doing it for a while, he's beginning to give me other offshoots that fall under the category of gratitude. And it's funny, yours is purpose, mine's gratitude. And the things he's giving me to do next are I just never would have thought of either. And it's really like one brick, then the next brick, then the next brick,
Mhm.
and there's this road being built that he wants to help usher people down back towards him.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited for you and all that you're doing and all that God's, will continue to do through you and your ministry.
Thank you. I'm excited for you too. And it's funny, when we talk back and forth, when we text, he'll say, "You're the greatest." I'm like, "No, you're the greatest." And we go back and forth, and we're like, "All right, God's the greatest. God's the greatest." But it's just that it's so unusual to meet somebody who's constantly encouraging, uplifting, always willing to link arms and support. And to have people like that in your life is super important. So, the body of Christ is not confined to a building. It's not confined to time or space. And it's just so wonderful in a time where the world was kind of shut down. People could still connect in a real way through the internet, through the telephone, through texts and emails. It's
Hmm.
just amazing what you can use that's out there for good.
Yep. Hmm.
So I'm going to end with my most favorite question. If you're a listener, you know this, but I just love the answers so much. They're always so good. Okay. So if you could give your younger self any advice, what would that be?
Wow. Well, I guess if I could give my younger self advice, it would probably be surrounding the topic of forming good habits early.
Mm.
So like reading more books, pray more, exercise. I think the older I get, the more I realize, how important it is to really develop good habits
Yep.
early in life. So that would probably be the advice that I would give my younger self.
Yeah. Very,
Exercise and develop discipline.
very good advice. Discipline is so important. You really can't get anywhere without it.
No, nowhere.
And to have known the things I know now about how important obedience and discipline are at a younger age would have been so life-changing.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
exactly.
we can tell people now, and we can tell our younger self from this point of view. um, well, Jasmine, it has just been so awesome to have you on the show, to sit down and talk with you some more, to get a chance to share your story. I am so encouraged by all that you're doing, and I'm thankful for your friendship, and just grateful that you could be with me today.
Yes, Amanda, thank you. This has been an absolute honor to be a part of your show. Thank you for being such an encouraging friend, and um, I love what you're doing. And I will continue to pray for you, and you're making an impact. So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. You're always in my prayers as well, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. If you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.